listening to Give God 90, where we're not afraid of the tough biblical questions, because we will dig through the language, the culture, and the history to find the truth revealed in the words of our Creator.
I wanna see the light.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for letting us be part of your day. As always, for everyone who doesn't know, my name is Jerry Mitchell. Sitting beside me is the recently repaired Myra.
Hi, everyone.
She's sitting here listening to the intro music, which is always fun. Hopefully you like that as well. Lots of stuff going on in the world. Whole lot of stuff going on in the world.
Very sad.
Not much of it good from what we see on the news, right? In the United States here, we had the gas pipeline hack from Russia or wherever it was from. It affected several of the southeastern states, and it affected those states that border those southeastern states. Mm-hmm. Delaware is not part of that pipeline, however, Maryland and Virginia are, and yes, we actually got to sit in a gas line yesterday, right? Yeah,
yes.
Yesterday. It was the first time I'd actually seen lines at the gas pump that long since about 75.
I was going to say when we
about
were kids.
1975. Yeah, long before I had, a few years before I had my driver's license. But you could ride by and see the gas lines. So that's going on. They had a lot of heavy torrential rain in Uganda. We got a video from someone who listens to us there, watching the mudslides coming, where the hillsides were sliding down. There was so much rain and so much mud, they just finally gave up and went from the top to the bottom.
Right, rather fast. Kind
of scary situation to be in. And the big thing that I really wasn't planning on talking about tonight, but I've had some people contact me and ask me about this. Of course, the violence, I guess is a good way to say it, in Israel currently. I've had a couple of people now contact me and ask me my opinion. And I said, well, finally, if you listen to the podcast tonight, you're going to get the opinion, and that's what we're going to look at. The chat is open if you want to leave a comment or ask a question. That's absolutely fine if you're listening to us live. If you're listening to us later than live, when we're not actually sitting here at the microphone, you can still leave a comment, right? Just, I will get to you as soon as I get the notification that you left a comment. So it's there. It's available. The other thing is, if you're listening to this, you like what you hear, the like buttons, the share buttons, because that's how more and more people hear about us all the time. People put this out there. We don't pay for advertising. We're not. In fact, when we didn't pay for advertising anyway, but we allowed certain people to put advertising on us until we had one that didn't suit what we were doing and what we're about, so we don't do that anymore because we don't have any control over who was advertising from that group, so we don't do that. There's just before we came on the air, and currently, from what I'm speaking, about 2 hours ago, the Israeli Defense Forces began a campaign of strikes in the Gaza Strip. So that is all fresh and new for us. Information is coming in as we speak, and hopefully you'll understand a little bit more about why this is going on in just a few minutes. So tonight we're going to start with something that David wrote a very long time ago. And early on in the Psalms, we hear this, and you're going to read Psalm 2, verses 1 through 6 to get us started.
Why are the nations so angry? Why are the people making useless plans? The kings of the earth prepare to fight. Their leaders make plans together against the Lord and his anointed king. Let's break the chains that hold us prisoners. Let's throw off the ropes that tie us, the nations say. But the Lord in heaven laughs. He makes fun of them. Then the Lord warns them. He frightens them with his anger. He says, I have appointed my own king. He will rule in Jerusalem on my holy mountain.
All right. Now, normally I would say something about verse 4, but, when the Almighty laughs at our plans, sometimes it's not always a good thing, right? David begins with a question that we could ask ourselves even today. Why do some of the people, why do they make useless plans? And the word David uses here is important. A lot of times when we talk about the word goyim, it's associated today with the anyone other than Jew, right? That's how we think of that word today. But actually, in Exodus 19, the mixed multitude is actually called the goyim. So what David's saying is, why do some of the people, and it didn't matter at that time whether they were inside or outside of Israel, why do they make useless plans? We could ask that question, and we're going to get some interesting answers, aren't we? The history of the Palestinian conflict since 1947 has and should be scrutinized by the rest of the world, because that would reveal that some, not all of the Palestinian people, have always desired for Israel to be completely destroyed, while others have had a desire to live peacefully among the Israeli people. Now, when you have a group of ethnic people who are divided, it's really hard to figure out who's your friends and who's your enemies, isn't it? You really have to be careful when you're looking at these things, because they basically don't look any different from anybody else. It's not like you have a black and a white problem going on, or an actual difference in races. It's not like you have a difference in language. It's not like because they pretty much all speak 2 or 3 languages where they are. They're not like a lot of Americans who are English only speakers, or a lot of the people in the Latin communities where they're a dialect of Spanish, right, because of all the Spanish influence. These folks intermingle and they go and come all the time. So you really don't know who your friends are and who your enemies are just by looking at them. You have to watch what they do. David says, why do they make useless plans? What's going on? And then he makes the statement, the kings of the earth prepare to fight, and their leaders make plans together. Man, how about that? There's a lot of Arab folks who live in Israel, and they work peacefully beside and for the Jewish communities. In fact, I was listening to a radio interview, it's been a year or 2 ago now, where the commentary and the fellow that was being interviewed, I don't remember his name, actually said that the Arabs living in Israel would rather work for the Jews because they know the Jewish folks are going to pay them. They said a lot of times the other Arabs, they won't pay them because that's just the way they are. It's kind of odd for an Arab person who's being interviewed by a Jewish radio celebrity to say something like that. But he was being very open, very honest. He said there are some Arabs who just are not good people. Okay? And don't get this wrong. This isn't a Jewish-Muslim issue. This is, religion really has no bearing on this conflict. This is all ethnic. It's just because you were born to that set of parents and the other person was born to that set of parents, and they have been taught, one of those young people have been taught to hate since the time they were born. It's amazing to me that some of the Arabs living in Israel have such a distaste, and they don't really hate their other Arab brothers. They just don't like what they're doing. Okay? They have to live there. They have to live there. They choose to be living in peace next to their Jewish counterparts, and they want to be there. They enjoy it there when it's not violent, when they're not in fear for their lives. But these militant people have created a situation where it's not always peaceful. It's not always conducive to want to live. Okay? Israel has included also Arab people in their government. That's just unheard of. That's just unheard of. They are doing everything they can to attempt to live peacefully, and so far, all of the concessions have been one-sided. Israel's done more than any other sovereign nation to exist in peace. But the call to annihilate Israel doesn't only come from the Palestinians. It comes from many places around the world. Now, if we look back in history between 1948 and 1966, the new nation of Jordan had annexed the area in what we call the West Bank now. And it's estimated over 500,000 Palestinians moved there. But when King Hussein felt his kingship was in danger, he kind of purged those Palestinians. Now, if you know where Jordan is, it's between Egypt and Ethiopia. Egypt and Ethiopia used to be next-door neighbors. Okay, but after World War II, this new nation of Jordan was created, and the Jordanian folks were willing to accept the Palestinian folks, and they were going to go there and everything was going to be hunky-dory, right? Well, that's not how it worked. In fact, it didn't last that long, because it's not a long time from 1948 to 1966. In fact, during the Six-Day War in 1967, that's when everything kind of was at the height of escalation for a while. Israel, during that time, gained a lot of ground. They took the Sinai Peninsula for a while. They actually held a lot of ground. And they eventually gave that land back. Now, the reason they gave the land back wasn't because the world said, you can't do that. You know, it's always been held by the world that a conquering nation gets to keep what it wins. Now, I know there's a lot of people in the United States that don't like to hear that. But the conquering nation gets to keep what it wins. To the victor goes the spoils, right? It's always been like that throughout world history. But Israel gave it back. And one of the major reasons they gave that back is because of what's written in the Bible. They have no claim to that land. They don't want it. They just wanted it as basically a buffer zone to keep from being bombed all the time, like's going on right now. What was it? 1,700 rockets have been fired into Israel in the last going on 72 hours, right? Something like that. 80, maybe it's 86 hours now. But there's a tremendous amount of artillery and whatnot going on. Many people are being injured and killed. It's not a happy place to live right now, and you can't even... I would say if you had a tour planned, it got canceled, right?
Right.
So the hardships, not only on the people who live there, but on the people who depend, Arabs and Muslims who depend, Arabs and Jews who depend on the tourist industry. What's happening today is not a result of people being oppressed or of people being displaced. Remember that the Gaza Strip was given to the Palestinians just a few years ago, and while it was under Jewish rule, they had, I believe it was 4 acres of greenhouse. So they had 4 acres of greenhouses altogether, which is quite a bit of ground, and they were producing so much food, they were actually exporting the food out of the Gaza Strip. Within 6 months of the Palestinian rule, they were importing food once again. They hated the Jews so much they tore down the greenhouses. Let me say that again. These people hated another group of people so much that they were willing to basically starve themselves and beg for international aid instead of improving what they had been left with. That's the group we're talking about. This militant group of Palestinians. The Palestinian people have had more concessions made in their favor than any other ethnic group in the world. They have not once, not one time, said, we can live with this. The only thing they want is the complete destruction of Israel, the termination, the death of every descendant of Abraham and Sarah. You know, they make Hitler look kind of like a nice guy. Let's face it, let's be realistic. So why is the rest of the world so willing to agree with them? Well, let's keep looking at what David wrote. The people make useless plans, they conspire together. This is no conspiracy theory. This is really happening in real time right now. What we're witnessing is an entire collective of people around the world who are moving to destroy Israel because they honestly believe that if they destroy Israel, they can prevent the creator of the universe from succeeding in his plans. They equate Israel with the Almighty. Evil people actually see the instructions we've been given by our Creator as oppressive and monstrous. Let me say that again. Evil people see the instructions that the Almighty gave to us at Mount Sinai as oppressive and monstrous. They see them as ugly, huge, nasty things that get in their way. They have no desire to have anything to do with the Creator or His instructions. In fact, what we're watching on the news right now is the violent rebellion, not against Israel, but against the Creator of the universe by attempting to destroy Israel. What we have in our world right now is an attempt by evil to fight against the Creator in this world. The only way it can, to attack the people living in the land that the Almighty Creator has kept for Himself. To attack the people that the Creator continues to protect as His promise to Abraham. They're so jealous, so envious, so enraged and hate-filled that there is still a stronghold for righteousness. Even though the current nation of Israel, they don't get it right all the time. They don't have it exactly right. They're not living by the complete set of instructions that the Almighty gave to them, but they're living as close as they feel they can by still allowing concessions to the Palestinian people. The hate-filled, rebellious followers of the enemy of our Creator are currently emboldened to attack Israel. Now, I want you to hear this straight from me. It is because the political features in the world right now are willing to allow it. Weak political leaders around the world, not just in the United States, but around the world, who refuse to condemn violence against the Israeli people, but they consider any retaliation from Israel as unacceptable and even evil. What we're witnessing is violence against those who appear to represent the Creator is acceptable, but prosecuting the people who promote that violence is not acceptable. Good is bad, and bad is good. That's what you're seeing right now. So the question has to be, why are good Christian folks around the world, why do they continue to pay for the peace of Jerusalem? Have you ever asked that question? We hear it all the time. And it actually comes from Psalm 122. And it's only about 9 verses long. If you want to read Psalm 122.
I was happy when they said to me, "Let's go to the temple of the Lord, Jerusalem. We are standing at your gates." Jerusalem is built as a city where friends come together. The people from the tribes go up there. The tribes belong to the Lord. This is the rule to praise the Lord at Jerusalem. There the descendants of David set their thrones to judge the people. Pray for peace in Jerusalem. May those who love her be safe. May there be peace within her walls and safety within her towers. To help my relatives and friends, I repeat, let Jerusalem have peace. For the sake of the temple of the Lord our God, I wish good for her.
Now that sounds like a good idea, right? And when we think this, especially if you're English-only speakers, you're going to be thinking, well, that's just wonderful. We should be looking for peace. But how do we obtain that peace? Peace in Hebrew language is the word shalom. The definition is peace. It's used to say hello. It's used to say goodbye. It's used for a lot of things. Kind of like if you were in Hawaii and they say aloha, right?
Right.
But when you break the word down, it actually breaks down to the destruction of chaos. When we ask for the destruction of chaos in Jerusalem, what are we seeing right now? What's happening right now? Going on right now? As we sit here on a Thursday night in May, the warriors in Israel are doing exactly what you've been asking for. They are destroying those who create the chaos that brings violence to Jerusalem. There's no instructions in the Bible for how to destroy evil or how to destroy chaos. And yet, that's exactly what the Israeli Defense Force, it's exactly what the police are doing. It's exactly what the good people of Israel are doing. They are attempting to destroy the chaos so that Jerusalem can have peace. Sometimes the only way to peace is the destruction. The peace the way we think of it, where everybody sits around in a campfire and gets along and they all sing Kumbaya or something, right? Sometimes the only way to obtain that is to destroy those who bring the chaos. And that's what's happening right now. If you're not in Israel, what can you do? What can you do? We support our Creator by supporting Israel. We encourage the political leaders around the world to support Israel. Not just throwing money at the problem. That has not worked since 1948. You can't just simply throw money at a problem and hope it goes away. You know, you can... Let's put it this way. If you have a terrible disease and you go to a doctor and he says, here, take this medicine. You go buy the medicine. You're throwing money at the problem, but you never take the medicine. Does it do you any good? Are you going to get better or are you going to get worse? We've been throwing money at the problem and it's not getting any better. It's not getting any better. Israel continues to make concessions, and yet it's still attacked. There's no way to appease evil. It's impossible. You cannot continue to give evil what it wants and expect to be left alone. So what can you do? You speak positively about the nation of Israel, about the children of Abraham, and about the Almighty Himself. If it's possible, where you live, display your support for the Creator and for Israel in your own way. You know, you can fly a flag, you can wear a shirt, you can wear a piece of jewelry or a support pin. If you have the ability to write a letter or an email, there are several ways. There are websites dedicated where you can send a letter of support to an Israeli soldier. You can do a letter of support through the Knesset, which is the parliament in Israel. The Prime Minister's office has a contact page where you can send them. Don't expect a response from that because they are very, very busy. You're going to get an automated response that says, we have received your email. And that's probably all you're going to get if you write to them and say, we support you. Keep going. Don't stop this time. Okay? That's what you can do. There's all kinds of ways to support it. The best way to support the Creator is to live the way you're designed to live, to follow His instructions. That's the best way to support the Creator, because what that does then is it tears down that emboldened state that Hamas has to attack Israel. Because around the world, if they lose support, they're done. Hamas is not a large organization. They're very small. The people who are sending money and arms to them, mostly the Iranians, this may come as a shock to you, but just because they all practice the Muslim faith does not mean that they all support what's going on. There is a widening gap, especially since the Abraham Accords. You know, not to get into too much personal international politics, but because of the Abraham Accords, there are certain contingencies in the Middle East which can no longer support the Palestinian conflict. There's countries that will not have anything to do with them. But because there's a couple of nations that still want to see the annihilation of Israel, there's people all over the world who are evil enough that they want to see the annihilation of any Jewish person, any child of Abraham, and they probably may be themselves, they just don't realize it. They're willing to support anybody that's willing to stand up against them. They hate God so much, they're willing to take anything and throw at Him. even if that means creating a situation where innocent people that you may be supporting have been killed in the conflict. There's no easy way around this. It's not going to, it'll get temporarily better, but it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. You ask me how I know it's going to get worse? Have you read the prophets lately? Have you read Zechariah? You know, he doesn't paint a very happy future until the one that the Almighty sends to rule with a rod of iron shows up. And the people who are currently supporting his enemies are not going to fare well. Okay? It's just the way it's written. I had somebody yesterday ask me why I don't see this as a religious conflict, but an ethnic conflict. Prior to around the 600s, when the Quran was actually written, you know, Muhammad lived after Yeshua did. There were different pagan cultures being practiced by the Arab people. They all didn't come together under one religious umbrella. You know, Jethro, years before that, was a priest in Midian. They had other priests with different religions all over. It wasn't until around the 600s when they all began to come together, and they still don't agree on how that religion should look. So it's not a religious problem. It's a people problem. Because, you know, one brother doesn't like the other one. That's all it boils down to. Unfortunately, what's caught in the middle are a lot of people who think that it is a religious issue, or who try to make it a religious issue, or who try to make it a political issue. But it's an ethnic issue. It comes down to one person doesn't like somebody else. The Bible tells us, love your neighbor. And it gives you a lot of options on how to do that. It gives you a lot more restrictions on what not to do. But you're free. You know, if you really don't like somebody and you know you got to love them anyway, it doesn't mean you have to go visit them every day. It doesn't mean you have to, you know, knock on their door and have coffee or tea. You can sometimes love someone better at a distance. But instead of being willing to keep their distance, there's a group of Palestinian militants who want to create chaos. They want to use evil to defeat good. And in the history of the world, that will never happen. Not in the past, not in the future. Just not going to happen. Not an easy conflict to resolve. Not at all. But it can be. And the only thing we have to do is to allow Israel to stop conceding and win. That's all we have to do to stop this conflict. Let the rest of the world stop supporting the Palestinians, who are the militants. Support the ones who are peaceful. Give them jobs. You know, give them houses. Make sure that they earn a good living. Make sure that they have, you know, everything that they need to have a happy, healthy, long, wholesome, successful, productive life. But the militants, defeat them overwhelmingly. Allow Israel to do what it does destroy the enemies of the Almighty. That's what it's here for. When that happens, you'll be amazed at what we see. I'm not sure that's ever going to happen, not with the world leaders we have right now, but it should. It absolutely should. You see, the militant Palestinians aren't just destroying Jewish homes. They don't care who they kill. They don't care who is affected, as long as it makes them look good. And this conflict does not make them look good. You know, if I could give Benjamin Netanyahu a little bit of advice, it would be this. Occupy the Gaza Strip. Take it back. Make sure that you eradicate every militant Palestinian there. Fill up the terrorist tunnels with whatever you need to fill them up with to stop what's going on. And make sure that you leave enough force along that border with a buffer that no one has the opportunity to invade you from that area again. No one has the opportunity to fire rockets into your nation from that area ever again. You have my permission. Doesn't do any good, but you have it. I will support you with that. Now, if the militants want to lay down their arms, go to work, that's fine. Do that. Prove to us you are worthy of our support. Be human, not evil. That's how you get my support. But you cannot continue, you should not be allowed to continue your hatred of and your love of evil, but your hatred for everybody else. Not in this world. We just don't have time for you anymore. And be glad that I am not the Prime Minister of Israel. Okay? Did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Just keep Israel in your prayers and all the IDF soldiers.
Absolutely. If you didn't realize this, we are absolutely proud supporters of the nation of Israel and of the people of Abraham. They absolutely deserve better than what they're getting from the rest of the world right now. Until Monday, have a blessed week, everyone. We hope our next show will be a lot happier than this one was. Thank you.